Ba-da-dum-bum, ba-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-dum-bum, ba-ba-da-bum. Ooh, yeah, too sweet. Should we start this thing?
I'm leaving all of that in.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Justin, the Wrestling Classic, and I'm here with my co-host Danny B. And today we are here to talk about none other than the New World Order. It's been nearly 20 years since their existence. Over 20 years.
22 years. Wait. 22 years tomorrow is when Scott Hall made his appearance. How crazy is that? So hold on a second. Okay, first of all, we did not plan this, right?
No, we didn't. Well, we planned it. We knew we were going to do the NWO, but we didn't plan the fact that it was going to drop the same day that Scott Hall made his initial appearance on Nitro, coming through the crowd. That's crazy. That's awesome. Knowledge on me.
That's awesome. You know who I am, but you don't know why I'm here.
You want a war? Well, you got... Hey, yo, where is the Nacho Man?
Where's the Nacho Man? Dude, I don't even know. So I guess we'll preface this by saying we were initially going to try to do the entire NWO in one show. And damn it, it's not possible. You can't do it.
What I think we should do, though, as you can tell, we're doing this on the go and not really structured properly yet, I guess.
People that. I wasn't telling you that. I was telling the people that.
No, what I'm thinking that we should do for the people is that I think we should talk about just the NWO generally, whether throughout all the years, but we won't do like the Roman episode last week.
No, absolutely not. But we're going to end up focusing a lot on earlier NWO, of course.
Oh, no, for sure. Definitely.
Because, man, I was talking to your boy Connor today.
Yeah.
And he's like, I've been a WWE loyalist forever. He's like, DX was way better than the NWO. I was like, all right, look, me being a Shawn Michaels mark and a D-Generation X mark.
Yeah.
I honestly, for the longest time, would have agreed. Up until last year, I rewatched everything from the first Nitro through the last Nitro.
Yeah.
I watched Thunder and all the pay-per-views and everything, and I was like, dude, holy shit. Like, the NWO for like a year and a half to two and a half years almost was just untouchable, bro.
And if we're being honest about it, there wouldn't be a DX if there wasn't an NWO. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the impact that the New World Order had on professional wrestling because, fortunate enough, I was really young, but I was alive for it, and I felt the impact. And I saw the impact with the change in the product. And the NWO was huge. And I think that we have to start off with first a little bit briefly touching on the three first main members, which was Hulk Hogan, Scott Hall, and Kevin Nash.
Absolutely, all three big names already.
And Scott Hall made his name in the WWE. Well, he was a Diamond Stud and stuff in WCW, and he worked in the AWA. But he really, made his name in the business as Razor Ramon in the WWF. Like, that character made Scott Hall a mega star to the wrestling audiences. That he was Razor Ramon. Kevin Nash went through a bunch of horrible gimmicks throughout WCW early on, whether it was Vinny Vegas or Oz. If you guys don't know what Oz is, go YouTube that because it's some funny ass shit. That's some legit wrestle crap stuff there. And then we had he came to the WWF because, Shawn Michaels. And you've heard all these stories. I know everyone here listens to the Bruce Pritchard podcast, or they've listened to Scott Hall and Stone Cold's podcast, and they've heard these stories over and over again. But that's what I'm trying to run through them really quickly. Shawn Michaels saw Vinny Vegas on WCW TV and thought that guy was hilarious and wanted him to be his bodyguard, and in came Diesel. Diesel had a hell of a run, was the longest reigning WWF champion of the 90s.
Yep.
And also made his name basically in the WWF. And then obviously the last person is at the point that the NWO became a thing was probably one of the biggest stars in the world, like rock level today. Like Hulk Hogan was a household name in the 90s at that point.
Absolutely was. Whether it was with terrible movies like Suburban Commando Or but
I was gonna say I actually like the Nanny. I remember the Nanny.
Mr. Nanny was all right. I mean, it was, you know what though? What was funny about Suburban Commando? Rewatch that. The Undertaker has a cameo in that.
Oh, I know he does.
No wonder they don't let you guys talk. Yeah. But so before we even get into it, let me ask you this, because I honestly want to know, because I was thinking this just as we were kind of giving a little brief backstory. Do you think that in 1996, Hulk Hogan was probably, if he didn't turn heel, was probably on the downside of his career? Would you agree?
I don't think he was on the downside of his career. I think he was on his way out, kind of. If Hulk Hogan didn't have that heel turn with the NWO, there's a huge possibility that he might have left wrestling, I kind of think. He would have went more into the entertainment movie side of things. I feel like people were sick and tired of the, say your prayers and eat your vitamins, yellow and red Hulk Hogan. I think, it wasn't what the fans wanted anymore. And that whole generation that followed the NWO, the Attitude Era, DX, that all showed the fact that, okay, society changed. They didn't want that no more. It came off cheesy. It came off corny. And then also, let's be honest, what was going on right before the NWO and stuff, from my knowledge, if I remember, it was like the Dungeon of Doom trying to kill Hulkamania. Like, that was so cheesy and so like bad and not. So it was that same cartooniness, like, and the WWF wasn't doing any better at the same time. They were just as cartoony and gimmicky. It was just, I think,
it's not true. Duke the Dumpster Drosy was a tremendous character, Justin.
I don't know. I think out of all those people, and the one that gets the most flack that I actually think was a really great character when he was a bad guy was Doink the Clown. I think a heel clown makes sense.
Matt Bourne was phenomenal, but yeah,
that's a whole different topic. We're talking about the early '90s WWF one day, but I believe people were over Hulkamania. I think Hulkamania got stale. I believe he obviously had his loyal fans that were still wearing the yellow and stuff, but they were fading away. They were getting over that cheesy white meat babyface.
We had enough.
Yeah,
essentially.
You gotta think about it. Hogan was running wild from 1984 to 1996 when that happened.
Yeah,
which is insane. The only person I think that had a streak kind of like that, and the fans turned on him, and they just didn't do anything about it, was John Cena. The only other person that went longer than that, and the fans did turn on John Cena, and they just embraced it in a different way.
Now, do you think that would have happened? So, and let's run through and let's lead up to that part before I even ask you the question. So, May 27th, tomorrow, 22 years ago, Scott Hall comes up. That's still mind-boggling. That's crazy. So he comes out and
is the Nacho Man. That punk can't even get in the building. Me, I go wherever I want, whenever I want.
Like, how cool was that?
It's true.
And the best thing, the way they did it was they had him legitimately like come out of the crowd mid-match. Like, nobody really saw it coming unless you were like, and like we are today, and it's a lot more accessible. Unless you were one of those hardcore wrestling fans that were subscribed to the Observer or like tape trading or finding the early internet. There wasn't much. Or calling the hotline, 1-800 hotlines, talking to Mean Gene. It wasn't calling Scheme Gene to get the inside scoop. It wasn't like back then. Things were still a big surprise for a lot of hardcore fans too. Not even just the casual fans, for the hardcore fans too. Because if you didn't have access to those things, you didn't see this coming. You knew they left the WWF. You saw fake Razor and Diesel show up around that same time, I think.
Yep.
Was that late night?
They showed up a little. When did they show up? They showed up a little bit later. I want to say they showed up around September.
That was horrible. Fake Razor and Diesel. But anyways, yeah, so that happened that night with Scott Hall showing up.
Yeah, so, but what was cool about that is nothing like that had ever happened before. You know what I mean? Like, you've never had a mid-match interruption in the same respect that you had that before. So there were so many things that were like trend setting and like set the precedent for like holy shit moments.
because back then, like, it wasn't a normal thing for. If it was a wrestling program and it was a wrestling storyline, the chance that someone would come through the crowd wasn't the thing. They'd come from the entrance ramp and they'd come out there or they'd have a segment that was planned from. This literally felt like, oh, this WWF character that we know as Razor Ramon is coming through the crowd, jumping over the barricade, stopping a match, grabbing the mic, and saying, "Hey, you want a war? Now you got one."
Right.
Now let's look at wrestling at that time. It was very good guy, bad guy. It was very goofy and corny. It was very Dungeon of Doom, trying to kill Hulkamania. Here's the Yeti. Or it was very, I think there was one event I remember watching where, it was one event I remember watching where Big Show, the Giant, my bad, and Hogan like fell off the roof of a building. Or
hey,
just Big Show did.
That was in the motherland.
Or it was just Big Show, I think, that fell off.
Yeah.
And then in the main event, it was the Giant and Hogan in a match. I'm like, this guy just fell off a building. Like, there was so much that was so not believable about it. And then on the WWF, on the flip side, you had Bret Hart fighting a pirate. You had Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart kind of having a realistic feud about competition and stuff, but there was still so much cheesiness. There was Goldust and the O.J. Simpson. Like, it just everything was like, it still felt very entertainment based. Like WCW on the other side made it like, wow, this is some reality stuff. This is a real invasion that's happening here.
Yeah, it seemed like in '96, for most of the year, for the first half of the year up until about the end of May when this happened, wrestling, as a lot of people like to say, wrestling was really like wrestling. You know what I mean? Where, like you said, it was just good guy, bad guy. You go to the ring, you do your job, and then you leave. If you're a bad guy, you stay a bad guy, so on and so forth. And there was nothing really in between that. So when you saw that, you go, okay, hold on. Like, this isn't supposed to happen for many reasons. Like, Razor Ramon was just on the pay-per-view that WWE had 5 weeks ago. And you're like, hold on a second.
And it actually felt like it was like, because obviously there was people that came from WCW that went to the WWF, and there's people that came from the WWF that went to WCW all throughout the early 90s and stuff. But that was the first time where I felt like a guy literally just came from the WWF into WCW, and he was inserted in there because for weeks they didn't call them Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. They were nameless. They were the outsiders. They were these guys. Like, they didn't get called, referenced by their own names. So you didn't know, like, was that Razor coming through? I don't think people would even say it was that Scott Hall. It was just, oh, that's Razor Ramon on WCW. Right.
Well, and what worked out so well at the start of it is you never would have expected, like you said, unless you were subscribed to the Wrestling Observer. Because I don't think there were any other newsletters back in the early 90s like that. So unless you were subscribed to something like that and there was a potential spoiler in there, you would have always assumed, based on where they were in the card for WWF, that Razor Ramon and Diesel were like mainstays and they were going to be there forever.
Yeah, and there's also every little, and I'm a big like character storyline guy, and there's so many little things that were cool about it. Like, for instance, like, he wasn't in any wrestling gear. This guy came out there in jeans and like a jean jacket. Like, he didn't, and everything he was saying, like, maybe they went over bullet points. I think on Bischoff's podcast with Conrad Thompson 83 Weeks, they talk about how, it was really just bullet points, like, this is what you need to get across. These guys, he was organically talking like as what his character would talk like, and it still had that Razor Ramon vibe to it. It sounded kind of Razor Ramon-ish, and it was real. Like, I feel like now if something like that was to happen, you're gonna get this fully scripted promo, and someone's gonna try to be reciting lines. But back then, like, that was him talking, and that's what he felt. Then you could tell he took breaks and he thought about what he's gonna say next. If you watch that promo, go back. I posted it a couple of weeks ago. You can find it on this SCDNA show page as well, because we've been posting NWO clips all week. Mostly Danny has, all Danny has. But
I think you got like two in there. Don't give me all the credit, brother.
But you'll find that promo for the last week's posts, and you'll see like it's not something that comes in this bang, 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 bang. He's sitting there, he's thinking about what he's gonna say next, trying to get the point across, and you see the wheels turning in his head, and you can see he's trying to say something. And that's what made it seem so much more real too. It wasn't like, hey, I'm this guy and I'm here to do this and blah 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 blah. Like it was real. He was asking these questions, and you're watching, and you knew you were watching something special.
Yeah. And it still plays so well to this day is the thing that's cool, because so many of the things that like we see now, and like you sit there and you go, okay, so like let's use some of the Roman Reigns stuff that we were talking about last week. Do you feel that even though like he has some of his best promos, do you feel that 22 years later we're still going to be talking about those? No.
Yeah, and I feel that way. Like most of the promos that from today that we'll still remember 20 years from now are the ones that seem like they weren't fully scripted, like some of the stuff Cena would say to Roman, or the pipe bomb, or Paul Heyman stuff, because when people are saying things from the heart and they're saying it with conviction and they believe in what they're saying and they believe that's what their character would say and how they would deliver it, it makes a big difference, you know. The following week, was it the following week? That's when we were introduced.
Not the following week.
It was 2 weeks later?
2 weeks after, yeah.
See, and that's what they were smart with, too, because they made you tune every week. And then after that first Scott Hall appearance, you were waiting to see him again.
Yeah, because he goes, okay, he's like, you know, I got a big surprise for you. And that was all you saw in the second week, where he interrupted. I posted that clip too. I tried to do that whole thing chronologically, because as I was going through it, I was like, fuck, bro. Like, this stuff is too good to not put on. You know what I mean?
You're watching it back, and I did that when they first put the Nitros up. I watched it back from that point, and even it being on the network, 20 years later at that point, because the network came out a couple years ago, and they put Nitro on like a year in. But when they put those first Nitros on, like, I found myself watching those Nitros, and I started from 95. I watched it from the shitty to the Dungeon of Doom to when Scott Hall came.
What's your beef with Kevin Sullivan, Justin?
I just thought the Dungeon of Doom was so dumb. I found myself like I love the Macho Man, and I love like, you know, the Macho Man's like my favorite wrestler of all time. And I went back to watch those 95 Nitros because I'm like, I want to see all the Macho stuff that I remember from like those little kid stuff. And as a little kid, I probably bought into it, but watching it now, I'm like, man, this is so bad.
Yeah.
It's so bad, and it's so cheesy, like Hogan and Macho Man like trying to fight the Dungeon of Doom, brother, and they're like, I don't know, it was weird. They shaved his mustache or something, and it was a big deal, but that's so dumb. It's like me shaving your beard and we having beef on it. But anyways, like I was saying, wow, Dungeon of Doom killed me. Oh no, I found myself wanting to watch those Nitros week after week because I found myself again wondering, like, oh my god, like I wonder what Scott Hall's gonna do next week. I wonder who's gonna show up.
Yeah,
I wonder when the NWO is gonna come out.
You're fully immersed in it, and that was true must see TV, and I think that was the very first time professional wrestling ever had must see TV. Where you're like, you must see it. Even if you're not a hardcore fan like you and I are, or the rest of the squad with the square circle DNA and the Misfits, and even if you're not in that group, that was still like, wait, hold on. Like, I thought that was pretty interesting. I got to tune into it next week to see what's going to happen with this. Like, we just got one of these big WWF guys here, so let's just see. And then, like Eric said on the 83 Weeks podcast, where he goes, I had Scott Hall come out and confront Sting, or him and Sting kind of got into it on the little announcers table area there, and that was it. And I didn't want to bring in Kevin Nash yet for the sole fact that less is more.
I'm glad you brought that up because I was gonna say that, and I think looking forward now, like I'm skipping a whole bunch, but looking forward though, like I think the reason it worked so well at the beginning was that idea of less is more. By the time we got to the end of the NWO, they were on so much, and there's so many members and so many people that it was a little bit of an overhaul. But at
there were as many NWO members as Wu-Tang members.
Yeah, so like when the beginning, less it was more, and I think that can go for a lot of things even compared to today. Because I'm trying to keep comparing it today, because I know a lot of fans that are listening to this are younger and they weren't alive for that. So I'm trying to compare today, and I'm not trying to put a negative light on today's product, but the reason why us older fans are like, oh, that was so great compared to today's stuff, is because I feel like today we get too much. Like every week you're gonna see Seth Rollins. Every week you're gonna see Braun Strowman. Every week you're gonna see these guys. Mostly on Raw because it's a 3-hour show.
Right. No, you're right.
And the bigger stars
100%.
are on there every week, and the majority of the time, like you're gonna see Roman Reigns. Like it's very rare that Roman Reigns or Seth Rollins aren't gonna actually have a match on that Monday because it's a 3-hour show.
Right.
Well, and then sometimes you get some of the most pointless, useless matches, and you've heard me complain about this. I'm like, okay, a really good match is a really good match. I totally agree with that. I'll always appreciate a really good match.
Yep.
At the same time, I don't think a really good match really sells the product, at least not to me. It's storylines, angles, and characters that make me invested in the matches.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
And I feel like we get a lot of throwaway matches because they're just trying to put them on TV to kill the 3 hours. Where, like, the reason sometimes I enjoy SmackDown or NXT a bit more is because it is only 2 hours or an hour. And some weeks you don't even see certain superstars in SmackDown. And at first I was like, oh, that's weird. But then I'm like, I actually appreciate that because you don't see them just being there and doing stuff. Like back then with the NWO and stuff, like you didn't see Scott Hall and Kevin Nash and Hulk Hogan and Macho Man wrestle each and every single week. Mm-hmm. You didn't see Stone Cold in a match each and every week on Raw. You know what I'm trying to get? Like it was like you saw that like Raw was to build their characters and angles, and then the pay-per-views you were guaranteed to see these money matches with these guys. And I feel like that was the biggest difference about that era, both WWF and WCW compared to now. Is they weren't wrestling each and every single week. Don't get me wrong. And if they were, they'd be throwing in random tag matches sometimes here and there, or squash matches, or like they would have really big pay-per-view matches maybe one night of the 4 weeks with those guys. And I think that's that whole less is more theory just generally. And I think that's something that they did really well back then that they don't do really well nowadays. And a lot of people might complain about it because I think now the younger generation fans are immune to like watching Raw and getting these 3-segment matches between two guys they really like. That's what they think is it's supposed to be like. But for someone that's older and been watching long, I'm like I enjoy these matches on Raw. Sometimes you get really good matches on Raw. But then when they book that exact same match for the pay-per-view, it's like you're watching Raw. Right.
You're right. You're 100% right.
That's my little rant.
It's like, but honestly, though, it's like the only difference between television and a pay-per-view anymore is pay-per-views, you have the possibility of a title change. And that's it because it's the same matches on Raw and SmackDown. And
isn't there a possibility of a title change on Raw and SmackDown besides maybe the Universal title because Brock's never there?
Yeah. I mean, there's a possibility, but it doesn't happen very often. There's got to be it's usually like a special show. Like Raw 25. You know what I mean?
Well, I don't know. Jinder lost the belt to AJ at a SmackDown in England randomly. I guess it's in England. I guess that's the perk there.
Yeah, maybe. But I also think that they, for some reason, topic for another day.
Back to the NWO.
NWO. So here's another fun fact for you.
Yeah.
I am just full of these. Kevin Nash debuts in WCW on my 10th birthday, which is June 10th in 1996.
For life. It's your birthday for life. But that's so cheesy. But I think a lot of people, what they remember about that is Kevin Nash using the word adjective instead of verb. But once again, showing that promos weren't as scripted back then, and he probably did that off the top of his head. Look at the adjective, play. Play is not an adjective, guys. It is a verb.
But like in all honesty, though, I'd rather hear a guy fumble like that and know that he was thinking on the fly rather than screwing up a script. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I agree because it's more real. And that happened a lot back in the day. That happened so much and it made it more real. Right. Because that's what happens in real life. You fuck up sometimes. You don't say what you mean and you don't mean what you say, but it happens,
Right.
If everyone's perfect and saying exactly what they're supposed to say, or even stuff that makes them sound stupid and they're saying it just because they have to, it's not the same. I think the Kevin Nash thing was a big moment, though.
That was huge.
He's former WWF champion. Like Scott Hall, Razor Ramon, big star, multi-time Intercontinental champion. You have a former I think people forget that part because as Kevin Nash came to WCW, he kind of did end up playing second fiddle to Hogan being the main guy. But if you look at it from the perspective that this guy just a year before was the WWF champion for like the entire year,
Yeah.
Like, that's huge. Like, he was their champion. He was their, flag carrier. And now he's in WCW.
Absolutely, which is it's huge. No pun intended. Because Kevin Nash is a big son bitch.
Because people probably look back at it now, with like years later, and they're like, yeah, Kevin Nash came there, and like that's it's a big deal, but it's not like, think of it like that. Like, for example, let's say, like AJ Styles just randomly ended up going to, like, I don't know, New Japan or something, like, next month, and you're like, wow, he was just a WWF champion like a year ago. Right. Yeah. Well,
like I said, it's just for me, it's just crazy. So if you look at, I'm trying to pull this up here real quick. So here's something even more absolutely crazy. PWI's top 500 rankings for wrestlers in the world. You know who's number 1 in the world for 1995?
Who?
Diesel. So just put that in perspective. Like, Diesel is the biggest wrestler in the world at this time, with Hulk Hogan being number 6 behind Shawn Michaels, Sting, Bret Hart, and Sabu.
So it was a big deal.
Look at the adjective. Play. We ain't here to play.
Look at the adjective, yo. Play. Kevin Nash, Diesel, number 1 on PW. Yeah, he wasn't there to play, yo.
No. He wasn't
about that. He wasn't about that. He was not about that adjective, man. I don't want to be the grammar. This ain't the grammar police show. This is a Squared Circle DNA
show. Grammar slam with CM Punk.
Yeah. But yeah, so that, like, yeah, and I think a lot of people don't like think of like Kevin Nash as that big of a move at that time, because that really tells you where the product was at that time. The fact that he was a WWF champion, came over, and it not considered that big of a deal when it should have been. Right. And I'm not saying it's not. I'm not downplaying that. I think that when fans look back now, they might not know how big of an impact it was at the time being, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Like, actually being there, like, whoa, that's Kevin Nash, that's Diesel. That's Diesel. He's here. Like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Just off a feud with The Undertaker, like,
And probably the best match of his career in WWF, following the WrestleMania match when he fought Shawn Michaels in the No Holds Barred at Good Friends, Better Enemies.
He was doing better in that, and I always say this looking back when I'm talking about, like, it's crazy because I don't think Diesel looked as good as Diesel, like the Diesel character, than right before he left.
Yeah, like that I don't give a shit attitude.
Yeah, and his hair being long and dropping the middle fingers and just being I'm like, wow, he's finally found his person. And then he skedaddles to WCW, so I'm like, okay.
Yeah. So this is the time when WWF files the lawsuit for intellectual infringement on their property. For I guess primarily from everything that I've ever read is primarily because of Scott Hall. Not necessarily Kevin Nash, because Kevin Nash wasn't doing anything. He was using his voice. Scott Hall was still speaking with his fake Cuban accent, which led them at the Great American Bash, where Eric Bischoff specifically says, which is on the SCDNA show Instagram page, where Eric Bischoff says, "Do you work for the WWF?" And they both say no, and then they powerbomb him to hell.
Which, when I was a kid, I loved that segment, because once again, like, I was so, like, don't me wrong, I mean, like, I was a WWF kid. Like, I grew up on WWF television. I watched WCW here and there. Mm-hmm. I saw Vader and the British Bulldog and Ric Flair guys, but I was a WWF kid. I grew up on VHS tapes of Coliseum Video and the WrestleManias and Hulk Hogan and the Macho Man and Jake the Snake and Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart and Diesel and Kevin. Like, that's Scott Hall. Like, that's a Razor Ramon. Wow. I grew up on that stuff. That's what I grew up on. So when I saw my WWF guys there, like, I started watching WCW again mainly because, Hogan went there and Savage went there. That actually worked.
Right.
And I grew up watching VHS tapes of the 80s Hogan and Savage because my older brother. And Savage was already at that point one of the most, like, I wasn't, like astonished by the guy. Like, he was such a larger-than-life character. His voice is crazy. His colors are crazy. He was such a macho mark. And I was watching WCW because of that. And to see these guys come into WWF at the same time, like, it was so cool. So I was attached to everything that was WCW at that point. So I remember watching that segment where Bischoff got powerbombed through the table, like live, because one of my aunts had a black box who got the pay-per-views, like, you know, legal.
That's how I grew up too.
Yeah,
Probably.
and then I had a magazine, a WCW magazine. They had the pictures of it in there, because you couldn't just jump on the computer, go on Instagram and YouTube, and watch it over again. I had to live through the pictures until the VHS tape came out, or unless, you know, we recorded it or something. So illegally, which you weren't supposed to record anything, you're watching on, you know, the warning at the beginning. If you record this to a VHS tape, it could be some FBI law. But anyways,
but that was also another first.
Yeah, it was huge, and like Bischoff taking that bump and them dropping the accents and saying they don't work for the company, because going into that event, all you kept getting was, oh, this is Razor and Diesel, this is Razor and Diesel, and they finally slowly started becoming Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, and that was another huge part of it. The reality based of it is that they were using their real names. That was kind of different because nobody really used their real names.
Yeah, you're blurring the lines of reality and fantasy.
Yeah, if I look at both companies, like, well, if we look at the WWF mainly, because I think WCW kind of tried to use actually, not really. Who used their real names in WCW? I was going to say Ric Flair, but it's like not really. Bret Hart was the only guy I can remember.
Bret Hart, Bill Goldberg.
That was afterwards, though. I mean, at that point,
oh, right, yeah. No, that was about it.
The Harts did, Owen and Bret. I think that was about, like, those type of people. But otherwise, everyone was using gimmick names. Now you have Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. These were the people that were here.
You're right. Yeah. No, you're 100% right. I mean, Undertaker's not his real name? No, I'm kidding.
I think it was The Undertaker. You just missed a little bit.
Ah, damn it. Yeah, I knew I screwed up something on there. But
you were close. You were close.
So, but like I said, when you had Kevin Nash powerbomb Eric Bischoff through the stage, like that was the first time you'd ever seen any sort of commentator take a bump like that. Because I don't know, I don't think we knew Eric Bischoff was in charge of WCW at that time.
Here's a real question though. Because I'm trying to think about that period of time, and you'll have, like, the dates probably better than that because I suck with dates and stuff. No, it was after. I was gonna say, did Vader attack Gorilla Monsoon first, or did these guys powerbomb Bischoff first? Because you're right.
Yeah, Vader attacked Gorilla at the night after Royal Rumble.
So they kind of had their first authority figure attack, I think.
Yeah, you're right.
But because I don't think previously there ever has been, well, at least not in like WWF,
right.
WCW, that period of time. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't know if like back in 1982 or something, Fritz Von Erich got attacked or something, or like, I don't know, Vern Gagne, like that's probably some old school wrestling authority figure that got attacked, booked himself to win a match for the championship, Vern Gagne in AWA or something. I don't know, but I'm saying at that period of time, like, it wasn't very common for the authority figure to get powerbombed by the wrestlers or something, or announcers or anything like that. So once again, still trying to keep it different than what you were seeing on the WWF.
Right, exactly. And you were seeing more of a reality-based programming, which it just led to so much cool things. So after you have the Great American Bash, and then, you know, Eric Bischoff saying, "Hey, I'm going to the," what did he say? Like, "I'm going to the offices of WCW in Atlanta. We're gonna find you 3 guys. We'll have this fight for you." You know, like, all of this stuff was just so unheard of. And like I said, and it's still cool to watch to this day. And I can only imagine, like, if I had never seen this, right? And let's say I'm younger than I am, and I've never seen that before. Like, the way that I love wrestling, that would excite the shit out of me to watch that, because it still excites me, and I've seen it 5-6 times.
One of the biggest things I also think was really cool about that era, and the thing that doesn't get the most amount of attention, is the fact that because people were so intrigued by this Scott Hall, Kevin Nash coming to WCW, and they're tuning into WCW more to see when these guys are going to show up and stuff, it put a lot of more attention on that undercard that people might have not been aware of beforehand. The guys that were wrestling the cruiserweight division and the Chris Benoits and the Eddie Guerreros and those guys, like the attention they were getting because people are now tuning in to see this NWO gimmick, like it made it so much more. It was so much more better for the business for WCW just generally. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. It did. It turned wrestling upside down, and it took a company that was not making money.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it just completely flipped it 100% upside down. But wait, there's more. Because we still got to add the third guy.
Yeah. And the way they teased that and the way they played that and the way it could have been anybody was smart. And like, even like, yeah, let's kind of speed this up a bit. Like, let's just go wait to the Bash of the Beach because they teased it for weeks. They had all this stuff going on. They tried to make it seem like it could be anyone that was already a part of WCW. I think they made it clear that nobody was coming in.
Right.
I think they made it clear
Unless
that it
you're
wasn't
Dave Meltzer and you said Mabel's coming in.
Yeah. They made it clear that it was someone. It's one of your own people, and they're joining us. And this is, and you got to understand up to this point, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash were still just Scott Hall and Kevin Nash with outsiders. The words "New World Order" were never uttered out of anybody's mouth. Everybody was speculating who was going to be Bash at the Beach. It was Lex Luger, Sting, and the Macho Man versus Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, and whoever the third guy was. On that same note, if you want a little bit of an inside scoop, I once kind of heard the story so many different times, so it must be pretty true. And that was that if Hogan didn't want to do it, and Bischoff went to Hogan with the idea, and he wanted to think about it and this and that, the third guy most likely was going to be Sting, because what they really wanted to do was take someone that was a super baby face and turn him heel. That was always the plan all along. So take a really big baby face and turn him heel. Right. It was either Sting or Hogan.
Yeah, which it wouldn't have been nearly not a knock on Sting by any stretch, but damn, it would not have been the same had Sting actually been the third man and Hulk Hogan pulled one of the "that doesn't work for me" brothers.
Yeah.
And
Hogan had the creative control to do that. That's why that's such a common phrase, that doesn't work for me, brother, because Hogan could actually say that and it wouldn't have been a thing. And I'm pretty sure from listening to Bischoff, listening to like Tony Schiavone, that Hogan wasn't fully with it until like maybe like the week or day of or something.
Yeah.
Like I think he took the idea, he listened to it, he digested it, he thought about it, food for thought, and then he came back and he's like, yeah, let's do this. Yeah,
that's exactly, and it's Hulk Hogan doesn't get enough credit. Like, all you got to do, honestly, is look at pictures. You don't even got to watch videos. Look at pictures of any time the NWO was in the ring from what, May till August. Every time these guys were in the ring was filled with trash. Filled.
Dude, that moment, that promo when Hogan turned and dropping the leg drop on Savage. And like, I remember those two things that I found as well. One of them that I think people don't talk about often is that they showed Hulk Hogan's dressing room that night. Yep. Which I found really weird. That's I think the part that people always I haven't heard anybody talk about the part. Is like, I remember watching Bash at the Beach, and they showed Hogan was there in the dressing room, which I always found was so fucking weird. Like, why would he be there? They should have never even implied that he was there. That should never have been a thing.
You're right.
The second thing that a lot of people complain about is Bobby Heenan saying,
"Whose side is he on?"
Yeah, which side is he on? That was and I hate when people complain about that, because I'm like, anybody that has been a longtime wrestling fan, or anyone like myself who grew up watching old tapes and stuff, it wasn't alive for most of it, but grew up watching tapes and stuff, educating myself in the business, like, Heenan always questioned Hogan's actions. He always tried to make Hogan look like the bad guy. That's what Bobby Heenan did.
Right.
So for me, I'm like, that doesn't really ruin it, because that's something that Bobby Heenan would say. He'd try to make Hogan be like, oh, he's the bad guy. It was just this one particular time he was right. And Bischoff said it. He didn't really smarten up.
Anybody.
The announcers weren't really smart enough to know that was going to happen.
Which was great, because you had such real reactions. Like, had they been smartened up, I don't feel that Tony Schiavone would have told Hulk Hogan, you can go straight to hell, which is one, and for me is one of the most iconic lines. Like, as great as Jim Ross was, that's one of the most iconic lines by a commentator for me of all time. Because it was true and it was from the heart, and because he didn't know and he was just reacting.
Yeah. And that always makes better TV when people are like, it's literally like watching at home and reacting. That's what these commentators got to do in those times, and it made it so much more organic, and like the reactions were like pure. It felt like how you were feeling at home. Like that's what it felt like.
Right.
I think it was poetic that it was Savage that he dropped the leg on, since they had the most on and off relationship, and for Savage's entire WCW tenure, like him and Hogan were paired up together as the Mega Powers taking on, the Dungeon of Doom. And the fucking dungeon.
I hope Kevin didn't listen to our show.
The fucking Dungeon of Doom. He doesn't listen, and fuck the Dungeon of Doom.
You don't know that. We got 25,000 people, brother.
Fuck the Yeti. And one of Brutus the Barber Beefcake's 90 gimmicks. But
he was Zodiac.
He was the question mark. Zodiac. I don't know. Question mark? Was it question mark? I don't know.
I don't even know.
The man with no name or something. And that was like, I don't know. That was the stupidest group ever. But toss my list of stupidest factions of all time.
That's got to be at the top.
So it was cool for Hogan to be dropping the leg on Savage. The promo after is something that I think people will never forget, and the garbage getting thrown in the ring. I think that added to the whole NWO stigma, because like that was like not something we saw all the time. You didn't see garbage being thrown in the ring by fans. That wasn't
right. You wouldn't see it. You'd see it every now and then. You would see it when they would.
Right here came from a great big organization up north, and everybody was wondering who the third man was. Well, who knows more about that organization than me, brother?
I've been there, I've done that. You have made the wrong decision, in my opinion.
Well, let me tell you something. I made that organization a monster. I made people rich up there. I made the people that ran that organization rich up there, brother.
My point about that, I just want to show that specific part, is because there's two things. One, they were still playing off the fact that they all came from the WWF. And two, the reason I always loved Hollywood Hogan a bit more than the red and yellow Hulk Hogan was because I was like, yes, this guy's finally telling the truth of how he actually feels. I feel like in real life, there is a part of Hulk Hogan, which has to be because, wrestlers are exaggerated versions of yourself. There is a part of Hulk Hogan that feels like, yeah, I helped make that company. I made the WWF just as much as Vince McMahon. Like, without me, it wouldn't have been what it was. And Hollywood Hogan was that guy that thought he was the god of wrestling.
Right. He had to. He has to feel that way because for a lot of at the end of the day, he and Vince McMahon really built the WWF. WrestleMania 1 was basically sold around him and Mr. T.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure that WrestleMania 1 would have still been a success had Mr. T not been there. Because Hulk Hogan was billed so highly, it just happened to go together with that whole rock and wrestling era,
everybody was making money when Hulk Hogan was on top,
especially WCW guys now.
Yeah, but at that point, everyone was making money when Hogan was at top in the '80s. Hogan made if you were on the card that Hogan was on, you were making money. Like in a sense, like Hogan took wrestling with Vince McMahon, obviously together. They took wrestling from a independent territorial television program to this global program where people could watch all over the world, and everybody knew who Hulk Hogan was.
Right.
So Hogan turning heel and, with two guys that came from that company, building this team of, we're the New World Organization, as he said it in that promo, but, it became the New World Order. It was massive, and I feel like Hollywood Hogan was everything babyface Hulk Hogan couldn't say, but he felt inside.
Right. Yeah, which was cool because you would have never expected that out of Hulk Hogan, which I think was part of the reason, which is why I asked you earlier, do you think that he was on the downside of his career, and maybe not necessarily as a performer, so maybe I worded it wrong, but as a face, as a baby face, as you know, the white meat top guy baby face. But then when you see him turn heel and that ring just fills up with trash, man, and you go, well, man, these people are pissed. Like, they are beyond pissed. It's just crazy to me when you go, oh, man.
So you guys already betrayed him, and now that he's turning his back to you guys are offended.
Right. That's like Americans Nowadays, which is a completely different podcast and everything. But, you know, it's...
I'm Canadian, Canada. I don't know about Americans Nowadays, but it was just, it all worked out perfectly. It couldn't have gone any more perfect. And Hogan being that third guy was huge because anybody that was watching the WWF knew who Hulk Hogan was, and it was different. And I think that was the biggest thing they had to do with Hulk Hogan WCW is make him feel different than the WWF Hulk Hogan. And let's be honest, the whole time he was fighting the fucking Dungeon of Doom, he was red and yellow. He was red and yellow Hulk Hogan. He was, you know, the same eat your prayers, eat your prayers. Do your prayers, eat your vitamins, Hulk Hogan. Don't eat your prayers, guys. I don't know.
Don't eat or do your prayers.
Yep,
Those are
I don't know, but the whole time he was still that same Hulk Hogan. So this was the first time we got a different Hulk Hogan. And I think that it gave people a reason to be like, oh, Hogan went bad? Like, what? Like, who cares what Shawn Michaels is doing with Ahmed Johnson? Hulk Hogan just went bad.
Right.
It was huge.
But so, and then this goes with that whole less is more thing. So you have this huge, monstrous, earthquake-shattering, whatever you want to say. Earth-shattering.
This is scripted.
Yeah, man.
No scripts needed.
But
listen to the adjective.
He's not on Nitro the next night.
Which is
Awesome.
insane, and it's so smart, and correct me if I'm wrong, I might be wrong, and maybe we both don't know this properly, but I'm pretty sure at that point Nitro was only still 1 hour.
I believe so, yes.
It was still 1 hour, so once again, it's that whole less is more thing. Hogan was there, and everybody tuned in each and every week to want to see what happened next. And like, let's be honest here. If you were to ask me right now, what are you tuning into Raw next week for? I do not have an answer. I actually don't. Like, I don't even remember what happened this week. What am I tuning in for next week? What are you tuning in for next week? If it's taking you this long to think about it, oh my god.
No, I'm just saying, like, to be.
Seriously, what are you tuning into Raw next week for?
This coming or
yeah, like what's happening next week that you're tuning in?
I don't even know. I haven't watched it yet. That's my.
Do you see the difference? Because you tuned in on Monday night to see what, like, Hogan turned heel. He joined himself up with these two outsiders, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. What are these guys going to do next? How is Macho Man going to react? How is Sting going to react? What is Eric Bischoff going to say about this? What's going on? You know?
Yeah, you have no idea. And oh, hey, by the way, we're not going to hear from Hulk Hogan anyway. Which is perfect because that just left you freaking foaming at the mouth, wanting more. Like, why, Hulk? Why? It was
nothing. It just didn't happen. Was Scott Hall and Kevin Nash on that show though?
Yeah, they were on there.
What did they do?
They cut a promo and they said, you know, we got the third man. You know,
and what does this say about Hulk Hogan as a star? Like, how big was Hulk Hogan that? Like, he didn't even have to be there. And these guys are cutting promos for him. And, like, seeing Hulk Hogan was a treat. Mm-hmm. It became, like, this special thing that, oh, Hogan's on this episode.
Right. Well, then after that episode, when he actually came on the show, was that's when I started the vignettes, those vignettes they're still priceless. Our Instagram is flooded with those.
Yeah.
I almost felt like I was overdoing it, but I was like, dude, I can't stop posting these because they're freaking awesome.
Those were the paid announcements. Those are the ones that would start with, oh, well, let me just do the thing that I've been doing because the thing is the thing and I do the thing. Just what I want you guys to do is just pay attention to the adjective and I want you to listen.
Has been paid for by the New World Order.
The following announcement has been paid for by the New World Order. Like, the moment that came on your screen, you're like, what are these guys
You're
up
like,
to?
whoa, what is this? I still remember to this day, I had a black diesel glove, and I know I'm kind of backtracking here a little bit, but I didn't get to tell the story earlier because I forgot about it, and we were just rolling. I had a black diesel glove that I literally threw away on my birthday when I saw him go on Nitro.
Why would you do such a thing?
Because I was a WWF guy.
Wait, you were that anti WCW at that point?
Bro, I was 9.
I don't know, man. I'm disappointed in you. What a mark. What a mark.
God damn 9-year-olds.
Danny Boy was a mark, yo. He threw his glove away. That's like, when Roman turns heel, everyone's gonna stop cocking their fists,
I mean, if people are still cocking themselves, hey.
You think if Cena turned heel, everyone was just gonna, Cena showed up in TNA, they're just gonna throw out their wristbands and their headbands?
You never know. Us Americans like to burn jerseys when people leave teams.
I don't know, man. America's crazy. You guys got some other teenage angst, but
we got to do another podcast about. Never mind.
About America, but and how it relates to wrestling.
Jesus.
So the Hulkster brother, he did the thing, man, and let's stop there for a second. 'Cause, well, maybe we'll just do NWO and the formation of the NWO here, and we'll go a little bit into '97. But I think a big thing about I want to touch on is how do you think this impacted the business, as in, like, okay, the NWO is this thing, it's formed, Hall and Nash, Hogan's a third guy. Did you feel like at that time that made the WWF go, oh shit, we're in trouble?
I mean, if I'm talking about at that particular moment, like actually back then, no. As a 10-year-old, I didn't think that. You know what I mean? But
what were you watching?
I was WWF. I was flipping back, and so the way that I typically watched, for the most part, I would watch Raw, but during the commercials is when I would flip back to Nitro. And here's what was very smart about Nitro. All of the cool shit happened during commercials of Raw.
That's smart.
I don't know how many people actually really remember that. Like, I still have DVDs of the original airings of all the Raws and all of the Nitros with the commercials intact and everything like that. And if you line up the sequences, I mean, it's not like something that I remembered, and then kind of I'm trying to think of the word here, but you know what I mean? Where, like, you embellish it a little bit. It was legitimately like, cut to commercial break. Where's the big surprise? Kevin Nash points, or Scott Hall points behind him. Oh my God, it's Diesel. Guess what I'm not doing? There were so many times where I would miss stuff on Raw because I couldn't turn back.
But what was actually happening around? I'm trying to think about the time, and then I've watched those Raws. At '96 would be the year when, like, my first memories of wrestling actually really came through, like, as watching as a live fan. I want to know your perspective a little bit more because you were 10. I was probably like 7,
Well, I mean,
8. And what I want to know is, like, were you because I watched both. I watched WWF and I watched WCW, but I only did that because I watched whatever the hell my brother was watching. He was in control of the remote.
Right.
Were you like intrigued by what was happening on the WWF at the time? Do you like the whole Jose lift? Well, I don't even know at that point.
I mean,
I
thought everything, as a 9-year-old, honestly, I thought everything Shawn Michaels did was gold. Honestly, I really did.
You were on the Shawn Michaels bandwagon.
I was on the Heartbreak Express, baby.
See, I don't actually. I remember liking Shawn Michaels. I don't remember being that hardcore on it because I grew up watching like I said, these VHS tapes of 80s and early 90s wrestling and what my brother liked. My brother was an 80s kid that was a Hulkamaniac.
Right.
So Hulk Hogan was his guy. And he was also at that point, what was this, 96? If he's 10 years older than me. So in 1996, my brother was in high school.
Okay.
So Hulk Hogan turning bad when he's in high school, being rebellious at the same time, was like super cool for him.
Oh, yeah. That was the equivalent of Stone Cold for us.
Yeah. So at the same time, it's like, I was, and also I grew up from all the tapes I had and everything I've ever seen, the action figures, I was the biggest Macho Mark. So I was wanting to see whatever Macho Man did. And I kind of felt like I was more intrigued by WCW at this particular time.
I mean, so the way I grew up is my dad got me into wrestling, and he got me into WWF. And it was just kind of like one of those things where it was like a favorite pastime of mine. Like, I would be lying if in 1995 I knew that Nitro started at that time. You know what I mean? Like, I would have been completely lying, because 1995 I didn't have internet.
Yeah.
You know, I got my WWF magazines in the mail. And that was the only outside of television, I don't want to say communication, but form of literature or knowledge that I had, which was kind of cool. But I also at that time too, every Monday night, my best friend who lived basically right behind me, we would always be watching because he was a huge WWF fan as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was kind of like one of those, like, hey, let's get togethers. But on those nights where, you know, you got a lot of homework or whatever, and the parents are like, no, you can't go over there. It happened to start being like, I did not see the Scott Hall invasion. I did not see that live.
Yeah.
I heard about it at school. However, what I did see the Kevin Nash thing live, because I remember that, like, I'm like, legitimately I was on my birthday. We finished eating and turned on Raw, obviously, to start watching Raw. Flipped over to the commercial and saw Big Daddy Cool on this on the competition, man. And I was like the equivalent of like when Hulk Hogan turned heel. You cannot tell me that somebody didn't rip their shirt up.
So from the whole point I was getting to, and I'm glad we got his, from your glove story, throwing it away when you saw Kevin Nash show up on his WCW. We took this a really long way and got a lot of information about our lives, so you were like a diehard WWF fan. Like, you were offended when Kevin Nash showed up in WCW.
I wasn't offended. It was more of like almost like heartbroken kind of thing. Kind of like when Hulk Hogan turned heel. Like, I remember watching the pay-per-view because my best friend also had one of the black boxes. I won't say his name on the air because I don't know if you could still get in trouble for that here. But
America. Yeah.
Hashtag America. But I remember watching Bash at the Beach, because we watched every single wrestling pay-per-view at that time. I remember being upset, and it was the same kind of feeling when Hulk Hogan turned heel. Like I said, man, when you're a kid, like, you idolize these guys. These guys are larger than life. These guys are Iron Man and Superman and Batman and Spider-Man to you, right? So you're like, it's almost like, how could you do that to me?
Yeah, you took it personally, mostly as a kid, I think.
Yeah,
and as someone that grew up idolizing Hogan, and this is the thing, I think that we're diving really into just the Hulk Hogan turning part, as I think what's going on here, and this first little half here. There's one thing I want to just quickly point out, because I don't know if we're going to talk about it later on and stuff. Before the NWO officially got theme music, I loved that Outsiders theme, that one that wasn't like, it was a ripoff of Seal or something.
Yes.
Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you know what I'm talking about? Like,
yep.
I'm just trying to play it really quickly. That theme was the shit. Like, the Outsiders. Like, I don't know why. I think they should still use the network for like a TV show or something. Like, oh, we don't want ads. Sorry, guys. But like, that theme was the best. I know, really. This, right? Like, how good was this?
We're both jamming to this right now, by the way, guys. You can't see it. Maybe on Twitch eventually.
We should use this for the intro of our podcast.
You know, who knows who owns the rights to that anymore?
We do.
Claimed. We're claiming it. Walking Dead style.
If it's on YouTube, we should be allowed to use it. But the thing is, America. But the thing is, one, that was cool. But my point, the other thing, because I don't think we're gonna talk about that again. But that theme was, it's very underrated. The Seal ripoff or whatever. But the second thing I was gonna say was, society was different back then, and I think a lot of kids that grew up loving Hulk Hogan, like, society really was a believe in your heroes, good guy, bad guy type of world. I feel like back in those days, like, at least to kids absolutely. And stuff. So these kids that grew up with Hulk Hogan being this ultimate good guy, as much as Hogan was getting stale and he was doing the same old thing over and over again, for like most people was like, oh, Hogan's never gonna change. That's what he does. That's just who Hulk Hogan is. Kind of like how we tolerate John Cena these days. We're like, that's just who John Cena is. He's for the kids and he does the Make-A-Wish and he does all this stuff. But we also gotta take that into context. Hulk Hogan was doing stuff with kids and doing Make-A-Wish type of situations and was the hero for children and everything. So on that note, like, Hogan turning was huge. It was huge because that was him turning on all those people. Like, you didn't, like, that's why people don't understand when we say, like, oh, Cena turning heel would be such a big deal, because, like, it strips all that away. Now you're this bad guy.
But in today's wrestling, are you really still that bad guy? You know what I mean? Because, like, you look at, like, The Miz, and he's one of the top Make-A-Wish guys too, and he's always a heel. Except that one time.
Except that one time that I totally forgot that I got called up on. You know, in 2012 when he did the figure four with Ric Flair, woo! He was a good guy. I'm like, yeah, clearly it didn't work that well because I don't remember. And who the hell was watching Miz? Who was even paying attention to Miz when he's a good guy? The guy is a bad guy. That's just who he is. He was faking it. He was still a bad guy. He was faking being a good guy just to trick you guys.
Damn it.
He was a bad guy the whole time. I knew it the whole time. It's true. Don't fuck with me. You can't see me. Yeah, I just said that. You can't see me. And guess what? You can't. You can only hear me.
I can see you now. I gave you the thumbs up.
So I'm proving a point that you can't see me, but you can hear me. So I'm right, you're wrong. And I'm always right, even when I'm wrong. You get it? Uh-huh. Anyways, back to the point.
I'm going to end the podcast now, guys. Have a good night.
Hogan turning was huge. Hogan didn't show up. So I think we knew the inevitable. Hogan was going to win the strap. These guys were going to take over. The plan that we heard over and over and over and over and over again was that Bischoff wanted to make it two totally different entities. He wanted WCW and he wanted the NWO. Was there a ghost in your room?
No, there's a loud fiance in the living room.
Is your fiance a ghost?
I mean, she could use a tan. Well, but, you know, not that's neither here nor there. She's not going to listen to this right now anyway, so it's all good.
She can always, you know, if anybody knew about tan, since we're keeping on topic here, Hulkamania, brother, he was always tan.
Good Lord, yeah, he was.
He was a golden boy.
He's like a maple syrupy brown, bro.
Canada! But back to the point. NWO made a huge impact, changed the game of professional wrestling. Hall and Nash coming to WCW was huge. Hogan turning heel was huge. Moving forward, we got to the point where they had these cutting edge promos, the paid advertisement NWO promos was like nothing we've ever seen before. They were shot differently. They were in black and white. They had different angles. They weren't the typical old school standing in front of a thing with a mic or being interviewed and cutting promos. You had them literally in their own space, and it seemed like they were doing this all separate from WCW. So it felt like you were getting a taste of something we've never seen before. You weren't seeing anything like that in the WWF either. So, and another thing that came with the NWO angle in the first period of time in '96, which a lot of people don't give them credit for, is like in the WWF you didn't see a lot of things happen backstage.
Right, you didn't at all.
And then with WCW, you started seeing stuff backstage. You started seeing attacks backstage. You started seeing the production area. You started seeing like, oh, there's a whole thing going on here.
Right. So if you, man, I'm just trying to compare like different things, man. So you had June 10th when Kevin Nash debuts, like you've got Owen Hart beating Yokozuna, Mark Merrow defeating Skip, Davey Boy defeating The Undertaker by count out, and you go, okay, those aren't decent. Those are decent matches. But that's your promo. So your big promo that you have on that episode of Raw is Jim Cornette announcing Clarence Mason's debut to file a lawsuit against Gorilla Monsoon.
Like, it's just, there's no comparison. I don't get it. Like, I'm thinking about that right now. I'm like, you know what, Bulldog versus Undertaker that's pretty cool, man. I'd probably tune in for that. But did it make as big of an impact as Kevin Nash showing up in WCW? Not at all. It was a count-out finish match, and that's what shows you the difference in the products. WWF was having a weekly show to give you matches and somewhat advanced storylines. WCW was trying to make you watch a show and make sure you didn't miss a thing.
Right. Like, the only thing memorable about that particular episode of Raw was that Warrior had the all-black face paint and wore the hat randomly.
Warrior was there, and that didn't even make that big of a difference. I don't think. I remember seeing Warrior on back in '96 and being like, "Wow, it's crazy that he's back." And I particularly remember him facing Owen Hart in the King of the Ring qualifying match. But anyways, point being is that the NWO took off. It was like nothing we've ever seen before, and. How did the rest of '96 go? We went to Fall Brawl. That was in '96, right? Well, first we went to Hog Wild.
You had Hog Wild, which was huge.
Hogan beat the Giant for the championship, which really showed that, okay, these guys are in charge. Hogan started dressing in black. He was no longer wearing the red and yellow, which was huge, because everyone remembers Hogan's. Those colors are synonymous with Hogan. Like, that's who he was. He was the red and yellow Hulkamania.
Right.
And he became Hollywood Hogan. He's embracing the fact that he's in movies. He was embracing the fact that it was Hogan's ego exploded and him over everybody else. The biggest thing that I also remember was that I don't think we can ever forget, and I think a lot of people till this day they see it and they think it's super cool, was Hogan spray painting the title with NWO. Yeah.
Can we talk about how well the friggin' Big Show or the Giant sold that knockout blow with the belt to his head? Dude laid there for 13 minutes after the match, not moving.
He must have hit him right in the right spot. It must have been that money spot in the back of the head.
It's like that quarter-sized kill spot on the back of an alligator's head.
And he's a giant, dude. How do you take down the Giant? I don't know, man. Just hit him in the back of the head with a belt. I think that's what takes down the Giant. Don't try to apply logic to wrestling, dude. That just doesn't make sense. That's the thing. That's the thing about today's fans. They try to apply logic to everything. It's like, you just can't do it. Just accept it and be happy about it. Like, in real life, if I came and hit you in the back of the head with a belt right now, what? I don't even think you would fall. And two, 13 minutes too long.
But here's what's funny is, like, it was as odd as it was, you didn't notice it. But I'll tell you what, everybody, it's on our Instagram page. Go back and look at it. Everything's in chronological order, but go back and look. You see, Hogan is literally standing over top of the Giant, okay? And all the trash that they're throwing at Hogan is just landing on the Giant because he's just laying there the whole time selling this.
You know what always amazed me about that period of time is that, like, how much trash is being thrown at them, and how every time, like, I sometimes felt like, even watching back, I'm like, I want to see if anyone gets hit. And then when you see someone get hit, how they so casually react to it.
Right. Like, if I got hit with a half full cup of Coke, I wouldn't just like brush it off. I'd be like, what the fuck?
The best was and this was later, like mid '97. Someone threw, like, I think it was like a beer or a Coke, and it hit Scott Hall in the head. And he just like fixed his hair and he did his little Scott Hall thing. I'm like, that's so cool. And I think that's another thing we really need to point out, because we've been focusing on Hogan and how Giant died from a belt shot, is that
Let's play tap real quick.
yeah, but I think what a lot of people like in that time period, and like before Stone Cold, before The Rock, before the Hart Foundation, before D-Generation X was the NWO, and before Hollywood Hogan, I think the one thing that people would pick up off of was that back in the 80s, it might have been the Four Horsemen, you know, that made what was cool. Like, you looked at Ric Flair, you looked at Arn Anderson, you looked at Tully Blanchard, and you're like, oh, these guys are fucking, they're just generally cool. Like, even if they're supposed to be bad guys, they're what you define as cool.
Right.
Scott Hall and Kevin Nash being Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, being so nonchalant about everything, being just Kevin Nash and Scott, they just, something about them were like, you know what, man, those two seem pretty cool. They just had that it factor.
They do, man. And
like, them just walking into arena, them together, putting them together, something about putting them together, because we've seen them separate so much. For them to actually be together, not in cheesy gimmicks, not playing a Scarface Cuban, not playing I don't even know what Diesel, like a truck, not playing a semi truck, like not playing a semi truck bodyguard, like actually being Kevin Nash and Diesel and being themselves and how they probably would act at that period of time as two buddies just hanging out, like. You could relate. You could relate to that with you and your own buddy. You'd be like, "Oh, well, like Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, like we don't give a fuck. We're cool." You know what I mean? Like,
they were like Fonzie cool.
That's what they were, and that's and I think this is I maybe people won't agree with this, but I think we give a lot of credit to Hulk Hogan turning heel, being such a big deal, and making it work so well. But I felt like, if Hogan's giving their storyline and that NWO thing a rub by being such a big name and doing such a big thing like turning heel, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash gave Hulk Hogan a rub to make Hogan feel cool.
Absolutely, they did. Because
Hogan was ripping shit up. Like Hall and Nash knew what was going on in pop culture, and Hogan was. I remember Hogan botching so many things that Hall and Nash do. Like every time even watching back, anytime I hear Hogan say "too sweet," and I'm like, you know that was Hall and Nash. You know that was all there, like listening to rap music, know what was going on, and like pop culture and stuff. And Hogan was latching on it, and it was funny because they made Hogan seem cool. As much as people didn't realize that, because Hogan was the bigger name out of the three, they gave Hogan this cool factor.
They did, and like you said, they probably don't get as much credit as they should. Because I remember, I think it was Kevin Nash talking. And he was like, dude, when we shot the very first black and white vignette, we did like 30 takes of it because we couldn't get Hulk Hogan to not be Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, I've heard that too, yeah. Because he wanted to do the whole, brother.
What you gonna do when the NWO runs wild on you? And you're like, no. Listen here, tweener Hogan.
We're not doing that no more, man. You're a bad guy. You don't have to play that stick. And I think, and my whole point of saying that, Hall and Nash were that type of cool. Like, they made Hogan seem cool in that sense. Hogan just being around them made Hogan cooler. And not that Hogan was a mega star. He was cheesy as hell.
It's true.
Man, he was fighting the fucking Dungeon of Doom. Now, and now he's with Hall and Nash, and he's all of a sudden like all the stuff Hogan started doing seemed a little bit cooler. Imagine, Hogan in red and yellow being like, anything less would be too civilized, and it would be like, oh, a cheesy Hogan. Hogan in black with Hall and Nash saying anything less would be too civilized. Like, oh yeah, anything less would be too civilized.
Oh.
You're a badass now.
Yeah, that was pretty sweet.
Yeah. It was different. And them taking over the announce desk, that was different. How they would do that all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, especially the one when the Giant finally turned. Like, to me, that was part of the best one, when the Giant turned and they took over. As cool as it was seeing like Hall and Nash, like, you never saw that side of the Giant either. Like, you just saw like the big angry Giant. That was about it.
Was the Giant the fourth guy?
Yeah.
I remember.
He?
He was the fourth guy, and I remember. Was he? No, it was Ted DiBiase first, wasn't it?
Ted DiBiase was fourth. Giant was fifth, and then
6 was 6.
6 was 6.
That makes sense. And I think that was pretty much it for '96, though, right?
Yeah, no. Buff Bagwell. He joined Virgil. Yeah, the security guard. Come on, guys.
Yo, they did so many crazy things. We're gonna have to rush through a lot of these because I think we're going a little over time here. But I think we're only doing NWO 96 at this point.
It's gotta be. But I mean, 96. Duh, Eric Bischoff.
No, but I just want to talk about some of those things because Eric Bischoff was, I think, near the end of December before Hogan and Piper went back.
Yeah, he was
so
in November 18th. The day after my mom's birthday, since we're going on birthdays and lives here.
We're on birthdays now. So let's just go down the thing. Hogan beat Giant for the title. It's just those three guys that are doing the thing. Ted DiBiase shows up and seems to be the guy backing up the NWO. He's the money. He's the one paying them. All that. This following message is paid for by the NWO. Like, that was DiBiase's money.
Not anymore.
He was billionaire. That. He was billionaire Ted. You know what I mean?
Essentially, yeah.
And then you had, obviously, Hogan beat the Giant. That was what it was. And was it Fall Brawl come before? Yeah, Fall Brawl was September.
Yeah.
Hogan wasn't on that? No, he was a part of the match.
He was part of that. The Giant was already there, too, because that's when they were doing...
We got to plant the seeds for what we're going to talk about if we're going to do 97 eventually then. The biggest thing there, I think, from that 96 Fall Brawl was the fake Sting.
Right.
That's when we got introduced to, like, those angles leading up to that where, Sting was attacking Lex Luger in the parking lot, but it really wasn't the real Sting. But honestly, in the dark, it looked like it was. And little things like that made the angle still must see. And you're like, okay, what's going on here? Why is Sting joining the NWO? And you saw Sting starting to get darker and, losing trust in people. And the Horseman and Sting, weren't seen eye to eye. I think one of the hectic things about the first year of the NWO was in the 96 year was seeing them beat the Horsemen so much.
Yeah, it was. Which was the Horsemen for the longest time were kind of deemed as like untouchable elements. You know what I mean? So you're like watching them going, okay, well, man, these guys are not only like. How many times do you ever? And just date all the way back to what you know of wrestling. How many times have you ever heard a heel, whether it's a single or it's for this particular instance, the entire NWO say we're gonna set out and we're gonna do this, and it happens, and then they say we're gonna do this, and then it happens. It's usually the heels are always going, oh yeah, I'm gonna kick his ass and I'm gonna take the title at Hog Wild, and then he loses or he gets DQ'd or counted out, and it never happens. But when the NWO said something was gonna happen, it happened. It
became a heel territory, and there was so many memorable moments in that first year. The attack in the parking lot where, Kevin Nash threw Rey Mysterio like a dart into the production truck.
Yep.
They ran off with I think it was Savage hanging on the back of their limo trying to get in there to catch him.
Yeah.
You had ambulances showing up in the backstage area, which was all new. This isn't stuff that ever really happened. Like, you didn't see this in WWF. Like, people running in there like this was a real fight. This was a real brawl that ended up happening backstage. You had all this drama with Sting, where it was like, okay, well, Sting was a super good guy. Now we're thinking he's in the NWO. And I remember that Fall Brawl moment so much with Sting. The real Sting runs in there.
Yep.
And he
and
he beats up everybody, and then he leaves. He doesn't even stay.
Yep.
And then he cuts a promo about how, like, he doesn't trust anybody no more and this and that. And he left. And I think the last promo Sting cut was in 96 where he came out and he kind of started looking like the black and white Sting. His face is black and white, but it was the old paint. It wasn't fully over his face.
Right.
And they asked him to join, and he's like, the only thing for sure about Sting is nothing's for sure.
Yep.
And then he left. And that was the last time we heard him speak for Hogan of the End. We can do a Hogan Sting program a whole different time, but I think that was a big thing in 96. Another big thing in 96 was writing off Macho Man. They beat Macho Man up week after week after week. He was like their main target. It used to upset me like crazy because I was the biggest Macho mark, and I just wanted him to get back at them. And we'd go into Halloween Havoc 96, which was, Slim Jim promoted. Macho Man had to be in the main event for that. It was Macho versus Hogan, which is still a big deal back then.
It was. Absolutely was.
And, screwy finish, all this stuff happens, Macho loses, and you have the Giant and Hogan in the ring, and out comes Rowdy Piper, and you're bringing in all these old Hogan feuds to tie people in, like, oh, this is, because think of it like this is the first time you're seeing Macho and Hogan with Hogan being the bad guy. This is the first time you've seen Piper confront Hogan with Hogan being the bad guy. It's old feuds, but it's like a new twist.
Yeah, which is cool because that still gave you those WWF ties.
Yeah,
because that's where these old feuds happened.
And let's be honest, with the fucking Dungeon of Doom, realistically, the Giant was Andre the Giant's son, you know, because that was, you know, there's a promo that happens in '96, and it was or maybe it was early '97 where they take over the show and like Kevin Nash gets took over the commentary and stuff for some of the matches, and the show goes off the air with like the whole NWO hanging out at that announce desk at the WCW Nitro announce table. And they're just shooting promos and stuff, and then Scott Hall turns to the Giant, and he's like, "Hey, are you really Andre the Giant's son?" And you can see the stress on Hogan's face, and he changes the subject right away.
But that was the cool stuff, man. Is they were given so much freedom to just screw around and make it seem like, dude, we don't care about your company. We don't care about your rules. We're going to do what we want. We're going to say what we want. And we're just going to act whatever freaking way we want to.
And they were winning and they were achieving stuff. And then, like you said, that's what made it so different because they said they would do something and they would actually do it. And, you know, so let's quickly get to like, so that was October, like November, December, we started building towards Hogan versus Roddy Piper for the championship at Starrcade, and that's when we figured out, after months and months and months of him on the commentary desk being an announcer, that Eric Bischoff was really behind the NWO the entire time. How do you feel about that? Do you think it was him trying to just involve himself in a hot angle, or do you think it just made sense? I don't know. Because the chemistry between him and Hogan after that was, I don't think Hogan and DiBiase can match that. Like Bischoff,
right? Yeah,
like kissing Hogan's ass and treating him like it just made like perfect sense.
I thought it was perfect for one of the reasons why is because again it was one of those things that you had never seen before. Yeah. Like I said, I can't, and I'm sure somebody will correct us because that's what people do is they correct other people nowadays. And I can't for the life of me remember if we knew if Eric Bischoff was just some commentator or if he was an authority figure. But we had never seen, regardless, we had never seen something like that where a commentator, if he was just a commentator, aligned himself and joined as the mastermind of the, not necessarily the mastermind, but joined as the NWO. Or an authority figure joined the largest heel stable. Like the largest heel stable in WWF, when it was the corporation, was started by Vince. It wasn't, you know what I mean? It was the corporation was Vince, the Stooges, Shane, and The Rock. That was the beginning.
The Eric Bischoff, like obviously Vince McMahon, the character, and we started seeing a lot of, and we talked about this on the Attitude Era when we started seeing when Vince started becoming more of a character, and when it started being pointed out that Vince was the owner more, it became more of a bigger deal. But what I was gonna say was, technically, like Eric Bischoff was that douchebag owner before Vince McMahon was ever born.
Right. Okay.
Because as people were pointing out, Vince as the owner, he wasn't a bad guy. When Brett shoved Vince, when he snapped, Vince wasn't necessarily a bad guy. The screw job made Vince a bad guy. But before Vince, like, think about it like this. I can't sit here and talk about the territorial days. I don't know what Vern Gagne or Fritz Von Erich or Eddie Graham did. I know who they are. I respect them. I know I've seen some of the stuff. I don't know the actual storylines at that time. Up to that point, every authority figure had been a babyface.
Yeah.
Gorilla Monsoon, Jack Tunney. Maybe people didn't always agree with Jack Tunney's decisions.
I was going to say, Jack Tunney, you know what's funny about Jack Tunney is I remember thinking a couple of weeks ago when I was watching some old stuff, I was like, that dude just randomly got so much heat, and I don't understand. It was so weird.
He took the belt off of Hogan and made a tournament at WrestleMania 4, okay? Okay, he let two people win the 1994 Royal Rumble. Okay,
fine.
Lex Luger should have been champion. I'm joking, but no, man. Bischoff was the first, like, and modern times and the 90s modern times, I guess. It's 2018.
Right.
Sometimes forget. In that time, like Bischoff was the first ever like bad guy authority figure. Like you had the guy that was the head of the company backing this organization that was trying to break the company. 1996 was the prelude to what I think was the greatest year in professional wrestling, 1997. And we're going to talk about WWF 96. I think that's on our list. That's going to happen. But technically, we just skipped all the Dungeon of Doom bullshit, and we're talking about 96 WCW because the biggest thing happening there was the NWO.
I'm reaching out to Kevin Sullivan for the record.
And fuck the Yeti. And
the Taskmaster is going to take you to task, brother.
Jeez, man. I can't even be like a full-on hater. I remember being a kid, and I rented Bash at the Beach 96 on VHS from Jumbo Video or Blockbuster, one of those stores, and I rented Uncensored 1996. Oh my god, that triple cage that had Flair guys in it too. And Hogan and Savage was supposed to, like, the whole thing was that they had to escape the cage. I don't know, it was so, as a kid, it was really cool. Watching it back as I got older, I'm like, wow, this is so dumb.
It's like the kennel from hell.
Like, who decided this was a good idea?
Who booked
and it was
this
all
shit?
like punches and kicks and like the random scoop slam. And like, it was just, it wasn't great. But it's so, if you never watched it, go out of your way, watch it. It's intriguing, but don't take it seriously.
Right.
But yeah, and another thing the couple of things I think we should throw out some rapid round questions about this 96 because we're already an hour and 26 minutes in. But there's so much to cover with the NWO. To think that we thought we could do it in 1 hour, wow, was stupid. But
idiots.
We're learning, guys. We're learning clearly because we did the Roman Reigns thing last week too. We think we can cover so much. I totally understand why Bruce Pritchard guys' podcasts are like 3 hours long, but
it's fun. That's the thing, and obviously, like you guys like it too.
It'd be different if we're interviewing someone because then when you're interviewing someone, you don't want it to be so long. But when you're just talking and you're having a conversation, like there's so much to talk about.
Right.
Let's shoot some stuff. 96. Do you think that Eric Bischoff joining the NWO kind of made Ted DiBiase's place in the NWO kind of irrelevant?
Yes.
I agree. I think it kind of sucked for Ted DiBiase. I think that was all. I think Bischoff. I just think it made Ted DiBiase seem irrelevant. Could there have been two guys backing? Yeah, for sure. But I agree. Second question.
Sure.
Would there have been a DX without the NWO?
No. There would not have been.
Why do you think that?
Because I feel that DX started in mid-July.
Of
right?
97.
In 97. NWO, and here, and I wanted to say this, so let me just hold on. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
What do you got, like a timeline up there? What's going on here?
By the end of 96, you already had 15 NWO members. So to say that the NWO wasn't freaking rolling by then, you know what I mean? By the time you get to mid 97, I mean, like I said, the NWO's got more members than Wu-Tang, and I can't even tell you all the Wu-Tang members. But I feel that that DX was a spark of that. Okay, clearly Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, when they're allowed to be themselves, they got even more over than they were here. So Sean, you're our top guy. You hung out with them. You're the same way as them. Be that guy. That's what I feel that conversation with him and Vince McMahon went.
So now here's my next question. This one's going to be a tough one.
No.
Okay? No, it's a tough one.
Oh, sure.
What do you think was a more important moment? And I already know what my answers and why it'd be that, but I want you to answer first. Do you think Hulk Hogan turning heel and joining the NWO was a bigger moment? In 96, we're just talking about 96.
Sure.
Or do you think the Austin 316 promo was a bigger moment?
Ooh. That's a good one.
Because we're talking about the NWO, this is an NWO podcast, but a lot of people will be like, and my argument is there wouldn't. Well, I want you to answer first. I didn't tell you my argument.
All
after.
right. Man, so, yeah, that's a good one. I feel, okay. I still would say that Hulk Hogan was the gasoline to the fire by turning heel. If that's a good analogy for you.
I think I will agree with that, because if we're going to say, I think Austin's 316 promo was a spark of something that they didn't know they had. They didn't know he was going to cut that promo. He went out there and he did it, and it got over way more than they would ever expected. And they're like, oh, this Austin guy, we have something in him. I don't think they had full faith in him yet. Well, they had enough. He was the king of the ring and whatnot. But I feel like if Hogan didn't turn heel and the NWO didn't get as big as they got, it wouldn't have pressured Vince to try to compete with WCW, even consider them as actual competition, because I'm sure as hell when the fucking Dungeon of Doom was around, he didn't.
Jesus Christ.
And the Giant was Andre's fake son, and the Yeti was walking out there like a zombie, and Brutus the Barber fucking Beefcake was dressed up as, I don't even know, a question mark. He did not think of them as like serious competition. Yes, Hogan and Savage were there, and they were big names, and people were tuning in to see Hogan and Savage, but God forbid you go in there to see Hogan and Savage beat up a zombie and stuff. Like, you know, I don't think he really thought of it as that much competition at that point. I think with Hogan turning heel and the NWO forming and Hall and Nash showing up there, that forced Vince's hand to change the way his business and his company ran, which took that spark of Austin 316, said, I just whooped your ass, and led to, okay, well, we need more of that. We need more of Shawn Michaels acting like a dick. We need more reality. Let's turn Bret heel. Let's put him as a family together.
Right.
So for me, I always say, well, that did come first. That Austin 316, I just whooped the ass. That might have come first. But the NWO forming, that was the reason that it catapulted and lit that spark with some gas and made into a big fire that ended up being the Monday Night Wars.
Yeah, because as awesome and as iconic from a wrestling fan standpoint of view, the Austin 316 promo was. If you weren't a wrestling fan, you didn't really hear about that. You know what I mean? But when Hulk Hogan turned heel,
and Austin wasn't as big as a star as Hulk Hogan at that time, is what you're.
No, absolutely not. Right, because when Hulk Hogan turned heel, like everybody heard about it. I remember them talking about it on the radio.
Yeah,
as just like, oh, hey, here's news updates. The weather is going to be 197 degrees down here today in Florida. 0% chance of rain. Hulk Hogan is a bad guy now, and you're like, whoa, wait, oh, yeah. You're right.
Yeah.
Like, everybody was talking about that. And that's what made people want to go, okay, let me start watching wrestling. But then when they were watching and they go, man, like WCW is great. NWO, man, this is really cool. And then you tune in, because obviously the ratings aren't going to lie. We got an 83 weeks podcast for a reason. So when WCW was the program to watch because they were leading in the ratings wars. But it was so good that you're like, I need more. Like, I need to watch something else. And like you said, WWF did not know what they had with Stone Cold. They didn't know what they had in the Austin 316 promo. And Bruce Pritchard even said, like, Vince McMahon's like, God damn, pal, nobody's going to buy Austin 316 shirts. And then, holy shit, like, at the next night on Raw, like, that's all the signs in the crowd are reading Austin 316. So it's like...
and those are, like, what, the two more... And the reason I wanted to put those two together, like, what are the two most highest selling shirts possibly of all time? I think it's Austin 316 and the NWO shirt. Those are the two shirts. Yeah. I literally... One of these girls that I talked to, her name's Yasmina, and I was creeping her snap today, and I messaged her because one of her family members of buddies she was hanging out with today was rocking a Stone Cold Austin 316 shirt. And I'm like, that's so nuts how over. In 2018, that NWO, and dude, I rocked an NWO chalk line jacket anywhere. I'm not even talking about New Orleans because obviously there's wrestling scene. I can walk that NWO chalk line jacket to the store right now or somewhere downtown, and someone's going to throw up a too sweet at me and be like, oh yeah, NWO for life.
Right.
Dude, what? It's 2018. That was 1996. Like, I was like a baby back then, and now I'm like a full-grown adult, and it's still just as over. You know what I mean? Like it's you can't compare that. As much as I love Evolution, people aren't going around being like, yeah, Evolution. As much as you love the Four Horsemen, unless you're a Mark, no one's running around and being like, four horsemen, yo, throw up the four, man. This little Turkish wolf that is the click sign that became the NWO sign at that point too, because if you weren't a hardcore fan, you didn't know that was a click sign. Shawn was doing it to Nash and Hall from WWF television. Hall and Nash are doing it to Shawn, and then Hogan jumped on the bandwagon. They made it a circle, and it became the NWO sign. And all of that is still going on today. The Bullet Club's doing it. The Elite, or whatever they want to call them, they're still doing it. Everyone, the impact that the NWO left of that gang mentality, that idea that a bunch of guys could come together and cause a ruckus, like that is still considered cool to this day. The WWF doesn't really know it. But look what's happening outside of the WWF. Look at the independent scene. Look at the Bullet Club. That formula still works today. The NWO is still as well known today as it was ever. Like, and I think the only other stable that can compete with the NWO with that level of popularity is D-Generation X.
It's true, because DX came around when wrestling was already popular. Yeah. And I hate saying that because I'm such a friggin' fan of DX, and I feel like when I say that I'm slighting him. You know what I mean? But DX came around as a result of the NWO. They came around as a result of pushing Stone Cold and saying, okay, like, not only we're going to let this one guy push the envelope with language and middle fingers and stuff. Okay, so we're not getting too much heat from the network for this guy. So, okay, here's green light, Sean, because WCW is kicking our ass. Go act like go. Scott Hall and Kevin Nash were acting and joking. Like when you said, hey, were you really Andre the Giant's son? Like they were acting and joking like they did backstage, which is essentially exactly what DX was doing. Except I feel watching it more, Kevin Nash and Scott Hall were more true to themselves, where I feel like Shawn and Hunter were turning it up a notch.
They're just being excessive,
right? And I feel like they were doing Shawn, that as being told.
Here's another thing that I picked up on, and you know what? Someone actually pointed out to me. I don't know if it was 90s. It was in 97. And this is something I learned only since I became the Wrestling Classic. Like it totally flew over my head. But Hulk Hogan and Hall and Nash guys were doing crotch chops in WCW at the same time DX was.
Right.
There's this debate of who started doing it first. I'm like, I don't know, but that's because I think a lot of people, they think crotch chops automatically DX. People in the NWO were doing crotch chops, like the whole suck it thing. Might have maybe been before, might have been after, but it's crazy to think that, because I think that's just a little nugget people take from this. Like, I'll try to post a video of it. Like, I've seen it happen a lot now that I watch back, and I'm like, holy shit, they're doing the suck it.
Because now you're looking for it.
Yeah, before as a suck it, Hulk Hogan's doing it. Like, what? Like,
suck it, brother.
But yeah, that's another cool thing.
On all kinds of levels.
I think we should probably wrap this up, but we can talk about the feud separately. How like Sting and Hogan and Piper and Hogan and their feud. We can go from the 80s all the way to the WCW feud, because I think Piper and Hogan, the rivalry between those two, it's something that deserves its own podcast. Because honestly, and it always sticks in my head, that one line he says at Halloween Havoc 1996 is like, "Do you think you'd be such a big star if I wasn't such a good bad guy?" And something along those lines. And I always thought, you know what, that explained, kind of told you exactly how the business worked.
Yeah.
Would have Hogan been as big as a star if Roddy Piper wasn't hated so much? Sure. If Roddy Piper wasn't hitting Captain Lou Albano in the head with Cyndi Lauper's records and causing a ruckus, do you think the fans would have been cheering for Hogan that much to kick his ass? Wow. That's
mind blown.
Yeah, and then I watched a documentary about, like, you know, how technically if you go all the way back, Hogan never pinned Roddy Piper. Piper never did the job ever to Hogan.
Right.
Until WCW. Yep. And there's a whole Hollywood Hogan episode we could do, because there's a lot of people that never did the job to Hogan but did in WCW, which kind of made you wonder if he was doing a lot of these things for his own ego. And two, Macho Man Randy Savage has never once beat Hulk Hogan.
It's like a lot of guys against Triple H.
No, like But he's never once. He's beat him by count out and DQs and stuff. He's never once beat him 1, 2, 3. We can do a Hogan episode one day. But the point being is that this is probably my last question though about the NWO in 1996. Do you think, because so much emphasis got put on the NWO, so much emphasis got put on Scott Hall, Kevin Nash, Hulk Hogan, and whoever joined them, people wanted to see that. So a lot of the WCW guys looked weak. Like I remember there was one episode where Nash and Hall came out with bats, and like all the WCW guys stood back, and there was like a group of them, and it looked like 2 guys were fending off against 12 guys. The Horsemen were getting their ass whooped. Ming and Haku, tough guys from the Dungeon of fucking Doom, were getting their ass whooped. People were getting spray painted. Rey Mysterio was getting darted into production trucks and stuff like that. All this bad stuff was happening to WCW guys. Do you think it would have worked to have an NWO show and a WCW show when you were pretty much just making WCW stars look so bad in that first period of time?
I don't think it would have. And the reason why is because they did do WCW show or NWO shows. They did those stupid Saturday night NWO Saturday nights. And all it was they were empty arena matches of them just kicking jobbers' asses. I think it made more of a point because WCW, the big guys in WCW, your Lugers and Stings and Flairs, they were willing to do the job and look, not necessarily, I don't want to say weaker, but they were willing to work within the system for the greater cause to realize, like, okay, the NWO is our bread and butter here. This is our show pony. This is our cash cow. Let's milk it as much as we can.
I don't think it would have worked either, only because I don't know. And then also you came to a point where the NWO became such a team. Like, who were they supposed to face? How are they going to have distension between each other? How would they have their own show? I don't know, because you always had the main plan initially was, well, we were going to have an NWO and we were going to have a WCW. And then you go into the future and you hear Bischoff or whatnot complaining that when we got Thunder, it just became way too much in those 2 shows. And then you hear all this other stuff about, like, I'm trying to think of all the stuff that always didn't make sense about it, but hell, they couldn't even make the Wolfpack NWO thing work, which is, I guess, going to have to be a whole different episode. But
that's the best part about the square circle DNA, man.
My point being is, I think we're going to cap it off with 96. I think 96 ended with, probably the NWO on top again, beating up Piper or something. But I think. Yeah, and I don't want to run in circles, but I think like nobody can deny the credibility of the NWO and what it did for the business, because it changed that fucking game. And we didn't even go on. Like, obviously, we are not insiders. We weren't there. We don't know about contracts and shit. We're not going to talk about that stuff. But as a fan, it made wrestling cool again.
It absolutely did.
As a fan, like, as a little kid back then, like, everyone was doing the 2 suites, trying to form little cliques and have their own NWOs and their own crews. Like, it was cool to be a part of a crew. It was cool to have that gang mentality, We
were all rebels.
And in the years of, like, East Coast versus West Coast rap, and you had Biggie, and you had Tupac, and you had Tupac with the Outlaws, and you had Biggie with his Junior Mafia. You had all these guys in this gang mentality atmosphere of the late 90s. The NWO fit just in with that. It was pop culture, it was hip. Hogan was cool, working off of Nash and Hall. Nash and Hall were just generally cool. It changed the game, man. They say NWO for life, but it's literally a thing. I know till this day, guys like Cash XO and the Weekend guys, they still refer to themselves as like the NWO, because that's how popular that was. That's how big the NWO was. Like, you want to talk about a crew of guys, a crew of your homeboys, like, you want to be the NWO.
Yep.
Just having fun, fucking around, causing carnage, doing the thing, making money, and being the hottest thing on the fucking planet.
Yep. That's what we're going to be. Too sweet, me brother.
NWO for life. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Once again, we're all over the place. We planned way more than we could probably fit in an hour, so this is a little bit longer than usual. And we didn't even talk about all the stuff we probably thought we were going to end up talking about. But
we didn't talk about a lot of stuff that we need to talk about, though. So we got to throw some shout out to Swift for the graphic.
Yes, Swift Spades has been killing it, dude. He's been killing it with our graphics. He's been killing it with honestly, like he's just as much a part of this podcast at this point as me and you are. Like he's probably not on here talking and stuff, but he makes us look good. You know? And that plays a big part, to look good, to look like we're professionally, because we ain't professionally at this shit at all, clearly. At this point, we're the Dungeon of Doom. We're trying to become the NWO.
Okay, guys, this is going to be the last episode of the Square Circle DNA show because I'm going to go kill myself.
Fuck that. 25,000 views in 3 episodes. Call me fucking crazy, but, like, that's fucking cool.
We don't need to be professional, bro. People just like to hear other people's opinions about wrestling, whether they agree with them or they disagree with them. Which brings me to my next point. 5,000 plus of you who listened to the Roman Reigns episode... who gave us all the hate and all the bad feedback for talking about Roman Reigns and posting Roman Reigns stuff for a week.
Oh, why are you gonna do a Roman Reigns episode? I'm glad you guys are getting this out of the way. 5,000 of you still went and listened to it, which is like, honestly, as Danny over here is playing the heel, I'll play the baby face. I'll tell you, brother, that we appreciate it, though, you know? Like,
of course, absolutely. It's
like,
all, you know.
We actually appreciate it. Like, it's crazy that even though Roman Reigns isn't the most popular person in the world right now, you guys still went out of your way to listen to it and show support. Like, that's insane.
Thank you. From the bottom of my heart, as much as I'm just playing the heel and screwing around.
What do we have next week? I don't even know.
Oh, I don't even know where my list is. Oh, let me pull out the trusty old list here. So next week we've got... possibly Evolution. I know we changed the orders around.
I think I didn't want to do stable after stable.
Right. So maybe we're gonna do wrestling video games. I gotta get my updated list. I got an actual file. Let me pull up the actual file. I think wrestling video games would be fun.
It'll be a break from, like, you know, talking about actual angles and stuff. I think it'll be fun because we can talk about how we used to fuck with the video games so much, and it'll give people, like, you know, give people something different than just, you know, talking about old school wrestling and Roman Reigns.
And then also we had the Roman Reigns giveaway, the autograph magazine. Throw a shout out to Hannah, we selected her as the winner. We'll do a nice little Instagram post on there. I don't know her.
She's the wrestling addict, or what's her
Miss Wrestling? Yeah, Miss Wrestling Addict.
And honestly, for me, huge shout out to Shanna. Shanna. Listen to the adjective play. Oh yeah, huge shout out to Hannah because I didn't even realize it. I remember when Danny reached out to me and he's like, I think she's our winner. And he started explaining why. And I'm like, I recognize her name. I was like, okay, Hannah, I see that all the time. Literally follows everything. She follows the Squared Circle DNA. She follows the Wrestling Classic. She follows Danny's personal page. She follows my personal page. Like, she is like supporting this to a whole different level. And not only did we just see her supporting it when we let her know that she won, she not verbally, written over a DM how much she supports. Yeah, how much she supports everything we're doing and how she listens every week. And guys, I'm not saying like you have to kiss her ass to win the contest.
This is not the Danny and Justin kiss my ass club here.
Yeah, like, we just be active because we see when you're being active. Trust me, and you guys know this if you've followed the Wrestling Classic for a very long time. I don't respond to everyone because I used to do that, and it would lead to like me getting really annoyed because some people are really dumb. But I read everybody's comments, and also because I have a lot more followers than I did back before when I could respond to everyone. Sometimes there's like 200 comments. I can't respond to 200 comments, but
right.
But on the Wrestling Classic, like, I read every comment that you guys comment on there. I'm doing the exact same thing on the Square Circle DNA Instagram page. I'm reading your guys' comments. I see who comments on this actually being active on that page. Like, I see you, Vinny, and I see everybody else that's being active on that page.
Just Murray, all you guys. Sock Monkey Mike.
Yeah, like if we see, Sock Monkey Mike, dude, if we see you guys being active, if we see you guys participating and supporting not only the Wrestling Classic but also supporting Square Circle DNA, there's a bigger chance that you're going to be a winner of a contest, and we're gonna notice you more, and you're gonna have the opportunities to win these cool giveaways that we're doing. On that fucking note, huge giveaway this week.
Oh, huge.
New World Order, okay? We're pairing up with my really good friend, my brother who has helped make the wrestling classic what it is today. I'll give him all the credit in the world. Steve Cordillo, we're giving away a Hollywood Hogan weight belt. And you're probably saying, hey, I don't hit up the gym. I don't know what I'm going to do with the weight belt. If you hit up the gym, that's fucking amazing. You can put used to it. If you're not, dude, Steve Cordillo for the last 30 years has been making weight belts for professional wrestlers, whether it's Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, Stone Cold Steve Austin, John Cena, The Rock. Say a name, 90% of the chance he made a belt for them. Talking about today, Sheamus, Randy Orton, Shane McMahon, Sasha Banks, Charlotte Flair, Ric Flair. He's made weight belts for all of them. And that's just wrestling. He's made weight belts for NHL players, NFL players, NBA players, Arnold Schwarzenegger. You name it, this guy is like the number one producer of weight belts in America. If I'm dropping names like that, like there's some other companies I've seen, but no one has hit the level he has hit. Those belts that you used to see Hulk Hogan rip his opponents with on WCW television, those big weight belts, those madness weight belts you used to see Macho Man wear, all Steve Cordillo. We're giving one of those away to you. These belts are worth over $300.
Oof.
You have an opportunity to win it for free. I'll put the rules on my page. I'll be on the Square Circle DNA page. Steve Cordillo reposted too. Participate, guys. And if you have this belt and you go take it to meet Hulk Hogan at Hogan's Beach Shop one day, where you can purchase these belts. If you go to Hogan's Beach Shop and you meet Hulk Hogan and you take this weight belt to him to sign, he will be extremely happy, trust me, because he loves seeing them. Him and Steve Cordillo are like best friends, and it's a huge opportunity, man. Worth over $300 a giveaway for a Hollywood Hogan, or even just an NWO weight belt. You get to pick which one you want out of those two, and it's a big deal, man. Giveaway coming soon.
It's a huge deal, guys. I hope can I win? Am I disqualified?
We're not eligible to win, but like,
well, good luck to you guys then.
I don't even have a Hollywood. I want one. I want an NWO Cordillo weight belt, but I don't have one. So like, this is huge for someone that's gonna have this. Like, I have a Macho Man one, I have a signed Hogan one, and a couple other ones, but I don't like. I want it because I grew up watching the Monday Night Wars, and I saw Hogan whip multiple people with that Hollywood Hogan belt.
Absolutely. Gotta have it. That's like nostalgic.
Yeah, like even if you're just a fan, like if you're not a huge gym person, if you're a Hollywood Hogan fan, a Hulk Hogan fan, or even an NWO fan, this is a big giveaway. Don't miss out. Yeah, man. I'll plug it, and it's happening this week. So if you made it all the way to this point of the podcast and you get to hear about the giveaway, stay tuned for more.
That's right. Until next week, guys. Next week, who the hell knows what we're going to talk about? I guess we're going to talk about wrestling video games. Will be like our main centerpiece, and then we'll have like 37 sidebars and other rants and stuff. But these shows for me are getting more and more fun. They are more structured, but they're a hell of a lot of fun. And I hope that it projects that way. I think it projects out that way to you guys. I think you guys like it. Your feedback has been good. You're hooking us up. We're up to like 15 reviews on iTunes, all 5 stars. Love each and every one of you guys. So thank you for all that.
We're just doing the thing. Dig it.